and in our ever ongoing efforts to build a collective gratitude practice, which we know helps combat vicarious trauma, if you could put one thing that you're grateful for as well. So name, organization, one thing you have gratitude around. It could be like your delicious cup of coffee. It could be the robin chirping out your window. It could be anything. And so as you all do that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I wanted to welcome you all to our April Collaborative Resource Sharing Meeting. Every April, we partner with our Child Abuse Prevention Council, since April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, to really focus on child abuse prevention efforts at a local level, kind of develop a collective understanding what we're seeing as a collaborative and what our partners are seeing around child abuse rates, and to understand what programming is in place, and to really just take some time to answer any questions, talk about what you're all seeing. So that is our intent for today. I wanted to say thank you to Cindy Maciel and to Susan, who are on the CAPC Exec Committee, and then also a very special welcome to Beatrice Schaefert, who is our CAPC coordinator this year. So thank you to the three of you for your work in pulling this meeting together. Thank you to all the speakers who are here, and I will introduce you shortly. And so for those of you that are just joining, again, name, organization, and one thing that you are grateful for. So we're gonna just launch into our meeting so that I don't have to talk too quickly and try to cram too much in. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started. So we're gonna spend the first about 20 minutes or so talking about the race and equity work we're doing as a collaborative. After that, we're going to then do our resource sharing meeting. So you'll all have an opportunity to share any program updates, anything happening in your organization that you would like the rest of our partners to know about. We'll do that for about 20 minutes as well. We'll take a very quick bio break, grab some more coffee, grab some water, do whatever you need to do. And then we will launch into the bulk of our meeting, which is our Child Abuse Prevention Council presentation. So that is our plan for the next couple of hours. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of your needs. And again, I'm always happy to see you all, even though it is virtually. And I look forward to the day when we can all be in the same room again. So Christine, if you wouldn't mind moving on to the next slide. And just a little bit of background. As a collaborative, we've committed to keeping race and equity at the forefront of all of our meetings and all the work that we do. We've really committed to approaching all of our work at the collaborative through an equity lens. And so you can move on to the next slide, Christina. So we have a awesome collaborative race and equity subcommittee that is helping us drive this work forward. Many of you are on the call today. But where we're at today is that we have committed to embarking, or maybe there's another word, on this race and equity learning journey. And again, we've talked about renaming learning journey, but until we do, now we're calling it a learning journey. And it's very, the learning journey is specific learnings, topics, trainings, resources about race, racism, and social equity that can help our collaborative, as well as our partners, ensure operations, governance, and programming of agencies and our collaborative are driven by equity to dismantle structural racism. We have kind of an 18-month plan to bring trainings to you all. We envision that there'll be some pre-reads like today. So we sent out a document beforehand for you all to take a look at, and no problem if none of you looked at it, but we just wanted to make sure that you had the resource that we're reviewing today in your hands. We will spend, sometimes we'll do just kind of quick check-ins at meetings like today. We're only talking about race and equity for about 20 minutes today. Other times we will devote entire collaborative resource sharing meetings to a specific training around race and equity, and we're talking about some specific standalone trainings as well. So we have this vision over the next 18 months of bringing a whole host of information to you all. All the resources that we are sharing with you are on the Slack channel. It's called Race and Equity, I believe, Christina. On the Slack channel. So the learning journey framework is there, as well as the specific tools that we're going to start sharing with you. And then so for today, I just wanted to give a very quick overview of the first part of the learning journey, which is again, a framework that was sent to you as a pre-read. But once again, I will keep saying it, no problem if you have not read it. And then we're just going to break out into small groups for about 10 minutes for reflection. So if you wouldn't mind moving, thank you, Christina. So again, just a very quick reminder what the learning journey is. So there are 7 different parts of our learning journey. The first part, which we'll be talking about today, are frameworks. And so frameworks are really tools for organizations to use in order to infuse racial and social equity into your culture and programming. The other parts of the learning journey are on this slide. I'm not going to take the time to go through them today because we've talked about them quite a bit in the past. We got feedback from all of you, or many of you, at our meeting last month around what you thought about the different parts of the learning journey, things that we could do as a collaborative to ensure that we're not only sharing this information with you all who are coming to these meetings, but also ways for you to get this information back to your organizations, which is why we're posting everything at this point on the Slack channel. But today we're going to focus specifically on that first part, which is frameworks. Next slide, please. You can actually go to 2 ahead, Christina. So the reason that we're focusing on frameworks first is that frameworks are really tools for organizations to use, like I said, in order to infuse racial and social equity into their culture and programming. And we really wanted to give you all some concrete ideas and pathways forward to help picture what racial equity integration into your organization's programming, operations, and governance can look like. And also as a collaborative, like as a collective of 45 partner organizations, what it can look like if we start to infuse frameworks into our broader collaborative. So today we're just offering a very quick overview of one framework that we've vetted and selected. And so we just, again, really wanted to offer not only a path forward, but kind of some hope and vision and some ideas about how we could actually implement this work into our day-to-day operations. We are going to revisit frameworks at the very end of our learning journey during the kind of the institutional section, so that we can possibly use this framework or another one to do a deeper dive into our collaborative, into your organizations. But again, like we kind of debated, to be in the vein of transparency, like, is this the right like first part of our framework? But we said yes, like we really want to show you that there are tools out there, that there are ways that you can start implementing this work at any given moment within your organization. So that's the intent today. And it is, again, just very short because it's just a quick snapshot. Next slide, Christina. So the framework that we're sharing with you today is by an organization called Equity in the Center. They have a pretty cool website if you're interested in checking it out. And the framework that we are sharing with you today, and that you'll have a chance to look at and a chance to kind of debrief quickly, is called Awake to Woke to Work. And the reason that they call it Awake to Woke to Work is it's specific phases on kind of like a race equity cycle as organizations begin to develop what they call a race equity culture. And so for Equity in the Center, building a race equity culture is the proactive counteraction of race inequities inside and outside of organizations. So very specific things and tools and activities that people can do within organizations to combat race inequities. It's very foundational when organizations are seeking to advance race equity. So the idea of building a race equity culture is kind of at the core of a lot of this work. And specific activities within the race equity culture create conditions that help us to adopt anti-racist mindsets. And so we had looked at a number of different frameworks to share with you all, and there's many out there. I know many of you on the call have looked at other frameworks, possibly implemented other frameworks within your organizations. And we like this one because it has very specific ideas and very tangible action steps people within organizations can take depending on your role within an organization. And again, it's kind of based on this whole race equity cycle. It's like a cycle of change. So often organizations start at like the awake phase, and then they move to the woke phase, and they move to the work phase. So I like the idea of the race equity cycle. We often talk about cycles of change with community members within an organization. So I like that it's along that framework. So the awake focus, or the awake section, is really when organizations, so I think about like our collaborative, are focused on people and building workforces and boards comprised of individuals from different race backgrounds. And so the real goal is representation in the awake stage of this race equity cycle. The second phase is the woke phase. And so organizations are focused on culture. So again, awakes on people, the woke phase is on culture and on creating environments where everyone is comfortable sharing experiences and people are equipped to talk about race equity and inequities. One of the things that we've heard from many of you is that you would all like some support, not all of you, but many of you would like some support in figuring out how do I feel comfortable having and leading conversations around race inequities within my organization. That's kind of a piece of this woke part of the race equity cycle. And the final piece is around the work. And so the primary goal is integration of a race equity lens into all aspects of an organization. And so it involves internal, external systems change and regularly administrating a race equity assessment to evaluate processes, programs, and operations. And again, out of all the different frameworks we looked at, I really like this one because it has very specific aspects of the race equity cycle and then specific levers. So if you wouldn't mind moving slides, Christina. So basically this framework focuses on 7 different levers. And the way that this group defines levers is that they're elements of an organization that when they're leveraged, they can help build momentum to embed race and equity within an organization. And so the levers can be specific groups of people within an organization. So it could be senior leaders, it could be managers, it could be boards of directors, it could be volunteers, so people who help make an organization tick. It can also be the systems, the structures, and the processes that organizations create to help them operate. So the data that your organization collects to help drive your work. It could be the culture that your organization is focused on. It could be staff capacity. So we know we focus a lot on staff capacity and staff training. And so that's one of the levers on here as well. So it's to get us all the different components that make an organization tick. So I'm going to share just one of these levers. So we selected organizational culture to share with you. And again, this is just a snapshot of what this looks like. And this information is all in the handout that you have received and that we're also going to share with you momentarily. So basically, again, the awake to woke to work are the pieces along the race equity cycle. So for example, if our collaborative, when we look at our organizational culture as a collaborative, and when we talk about organizational culture, and again, we're using our collaborative as an example, we talk about shared values, assumptions, and beliefs. And so our personal beliefs and behaviors as a collaborative, if we are in the awake part of the cycle of race equity, is that we are aware that a white dominant workplace culture exists within our collaborative, but we expect people to adhere to dominant organizational norms in order to succeed. We are also learning to address challenges that occur in diverse environments as a result of unconscious biases and microaggressions that create conflict and resentment among staff. So some of the policies and procedures that we might put in place and processes is that we want to share the organization's commitment to DEI as part of onboarding process of new employees. And the data is that we're really focusing on, and again, because this is on the people part, increasing diverse representation of our collaborative instead of addressing retention issues. And so I'm not going to read through all of these different pieces because it's a lot of words. But again, I just read that to you as an example of, as a collaborative, if we are in the wake phase, what you would see if you come to one of our collaborative meetings or if you participate in our collaborative, what are the policies and processes that we have in place, and then what's the data? And then as we move through this kind of race equity cycle, there's other specific behaviors that we would see, policies and processes and data. So that's a lot of, I know I just talked a lot for a while. So Christina, if you wouldn't mind moving on to the next slide. So what we would like to do is we're going to break you out into small groups. And so if you could just take 2 minutes of quiet time to orientate yourself to the information I just shared. Again, Christina is going to put the document in the chat box. You can open it up on your computer. If you have access to our Slack channel, you can open it up on your laptop or your computer as well. And then after you have 2 minutes of quiet, just kind of settling in with the information I just shared, if you could introduce yourself to your small group, just let them know who you are, your organization, and then just answer any one of the below questions. So what stands out to you about the framework that we just reviewed? Do you have any additional ideas about implementing this framework or another framework in your organization or your program? Maybe you're already implementing a framework, maybe you're not. And if there's any ways that our collaborative can support you as an individual staff person bringing this framework to your agency. So a couple of caveats about this. One, like we recognize that maybe none of you have seen this framework and like it's a pretty dense framework and that's okay. So if you could again, just like open it up, take a look at it, and please don't feel like you have to have like everything read by the time you have to share out. Again, the intent is just to provide a framework and an overview and a path forward of where you could potentially go as an organization and where we could go as a collaborative at some point in this work. And then the other piece is for that third question, if you choose to answer, like how can our collaborative like support you bringing a framework to your organization? If there's specific things when we come back together, if you could just put that in the chat box. And then I probably will just ask like one person on this call or 2 people, depending on our timing, just to kind of share out any high level thoughts that emerged. So again, process. So break out into small groups, take 2 minutes quiet time, orientate yourself to the document. And then Christina will let you know when your 2 minutes are up, introduce yourself, and then you have a few minutes to share. So we're going to go ahead and do that. If you have any questions, if you could just shoot them to me in the chat box and I will do my best to answer them that way.
Welcome back, everyone.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, so as we come back together, any one or 2 people wanted to share any initial thoughts? And again, please use the chat box if there's anything specifically you need from our collaborative or any way that we can help you bring this framework back to your organization. But anyone want to just jump in real quick? No, not one person. Okay, thanks, Kayla.
Allison, hey, oh, go ahead.
Okay, River, go for it.
Oh, okay. Just somebody mentioned that they had seen another framework where they put culture and head, I guess, of hiring the diverse workforce. And I think the concern, or maybe the question was, oh, what if you hire the workforce, but the culture is not in place?
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a comment that came up in our group.
That's interesting. Thank you. Kayla, do you want to share something else to take us home?
I just wanted to add to that I was thinking about the cyclical nature of it, and that like also sometimes the system can be a barrier to increasing representation. So it's like, it's hard to figure out where is the starting point. I think it's interesting that their starting point was just with representation, because I've seen like for our organization and maybe some others in the collaborative, it's hard to change representation based on certain systemic barriers we have within our organizations.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, thank you, River and Kayla, for sharing. And I would throw out there to you all as well, if there are other frameworks that you've used at your organization that you've seen that you think would be helpful for other partners to take a look at, you can either send them to Christina or I, or you can post them on the Slack channel yourself. So everyone has access to all the resources that we're talking about. So thank you all so much. And again, I know that was brief, Raul. I'm sorry that you got cut off mid-sentence in our small group. So I'm going to transition us to our resource sharing part of our meetings. I'm going to turn it over to you to do a quick introduction to this part of the agenda, and then you're welcome to kick it back to me if you'd like.
Yes,
Your call.
thank you. So I just want to welcome everyone to our 100th annual CAPC collaborative combined April meeting. And we do this every year, and because it's Child Abuse Prevention Month. So I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to thank our speakers for taking the time today to inform the community around mandated reporting and just opportunities that are out there for families. Two things I read this morning. One was around what we can do as a community to engage families, and it's really easy things that we can do. We can take baby steps to meet and greet your neighbors, and I know that I hear that we have a lot of new people that have moved to town. So, it'd be nice to introduce ourselves as we're on the trails or walking around our neighborhood. Go to parent meetings or attend virtual parent meetings for your child's school. If you have children, participate in activities at your library or community center. And I just want to shout out to the library, because you guys have really, everyone has, but like, I just want to shine a light on you guys for the efforts that you've made during COVID to give the opportunity for families and the community to still access your services virtually. And then just small steps, just setting up play groups if you have children in your community, but to invite people that might not necessarily have children. So maybe seniors that might live in your neighborhood or in your community. But that was a good idea. And then again, just as a community, we can all take steps to make communities more supportive for our families. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, but just to really think about it. Two efforts that or campaigns that the collaborative or the CAPC have going on are bookmarks. You may have seen these in the kits if you're giving to your families. If you want some bookmarks to give to your families, please email me and I can get you some. And the other campaign we started right before COVID was to do these stickers to celebrate effort. And if you'd like some of these, I can get you some of these too. And it's actually kind of nice to, pass these out to your colleagues or other people in the community that you've noticed that are, doing great work. I know it's just a little sticker, but sometimes it can mean a lot. So especially now in these isolating times. So again, thanks to everyone for being here, and go ahead, Allison, if you could go ahead and introduce our lovely guest.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cindy. So for the next hour, we are going to talk about what we are seeing as a collective around data, trends, and issues. And so the first part of our agenda, we are going to hear from Placer County, Nevada County, and the town of Truckee. We will then hear from Tahoe Truckee Unified School District and some of the prevention programs that are happening within the school district. And then we will wrap up with an overview of what CAPC resources are available. So Kathy Tanner, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick us off with an overview of what's happening with Placer.
Great, thank you. And I also have Mimi with Nevada County. We're going to be co-presenting, representing Placer County Children's System of Care and Nevada County Child Welfare Services. I think Mimi is on here.
Oh, we can move to the next screen. There we go.
So just quick introductions. Mimi and I are both supervisors with Child Welfare Services with Placer, Nevada County. I've been with Placer for over 20 years, and so have a lot of experience in this field. And today we're going to be talking about just a little bit of data, trends that we're seeing here locally, and issues that have been coming up. And then we'll do a brief overview of mandated reporting. And I know that we're time limited, so we will move quickly. With Placer County, just want to say some of our local numbers for suspected child abuse referrals that we receive. It's been pretty stable up here. We haven't seen too many changes with regards to the pandemic. We range from 6 to 15 new referrals every month that we take a look at and evaluate whether we're going to be investigating or not.
So I'm Mimi Grimminger with Nevada County. I have over 20 years in the field, but I've only been with Nevada County for a little over 2. And in that time, within the last year anyway, we've been keeping numbers in the last couple of years, but this year we have about 10 to 11 referrals a month that we receive in the Truckee area, averaging 38 in all of Nevada County, averaging about 38 referrals a month that we're assigning. So it's not including what we actually receive, but we receive 10 or 11, and we're going out on anywhere between 3 and 8 referrals each month. Can you go to the next screen or slide, please? Thank you. So Kathy put together some California statistics. Here's a little graph of what California looks like as far as referrals received. This isn't what everyone's going out on. It's actually all referrals that are received. And you can see that from 2011 to 2019, they're fairly consistent. And then we have a drop in 2020, and a lot of the counties saw a significant decrease in referrals due to COVID, with kids staying home and not being out in the community where there's mandated reporters like at school or activities, counseling, things were being done virtually, screens are off. So you can see that there is a decrease there. And if we can go to the next slide, it'll actually show you numbers so you can see just how significant it is. Where, let me move my, there we go. You can see, I can't quite see the bottom of the screen, but I did see it earlier. It was like, there we go, thank you. You can see where we're in the high 400s, almost 500,000 referrals received. And in 2020, there was a significant decrease of about 86,000 referrals less, again, due to COVID. So, okay, we can go to the next one, please.
So some of the trends that we're seeing up here in Tahoe and Truckee is that we're seeing families that have much higher needs, and that there's a lot of greater risk factors that we're finding out. And unfortunately, that comes at a time with the pandemic that there's also less resources and less in-person resources. You know, I'd say through the years, as well as this past year, a lot of the things that are impacting children's safety is like parental substance abuse, which goes hand in hand with mental health issues, domestic violence, things like that. I think too, just over the past year, stress has escalated, right? Like People were stressed about the pandemic, maybe lost jobs, kids aren't going to school, families are staying inside in close quarters together. And so we just saw a lot more high risk, higher need families. So even if our numbers did increase, certainly the work that we were doing with families did increase.
I say with Nevada County, we have actually seen a lot on the western side of our county, a lot of substance use, especially fentanyl. In the Truckee area, we're seeing more alcohol related incidents, and with alcohol is the domestic violence piece as well. So that's typically what we are going out on in the Truckee area.
I think like how Cindy had mentioned earlier about some of the protective factors is and things that we can do as a community. But really, you know, when kids are going to school and they're involved in activities and, you know, community agencies are able to like go out to people's homes, things like that. Those are all protective factors that really help to keep children safe. And so again, with the pandemic this past year, with a lot of those things shutting down, again, we just saw families that were really, really struggling, as I'm sure all of you saw as well. So moving on to reporting suspected child abuse. So really anybody can make a suspected child abuse report. You can call your local law enforcement agency or a child welfare agency. So you can call Truckee PD, Placer County Sheriff's, or you can call Placer County Child Welfare, Nevada County Child Welfare. And from there, we cross-report to one another. We're going to take just a couple of minutes. I'm sure many of you have been through mandated reporter trainings. We're not going to go through that in detail right now, but we'll describe right now, just briefly, the difference for mandated reporters in California. So all 50 of our states have mandated reporting laws. In California, I'm not going to go through this one in detail, but California does have a mandate that you could review if you ever wanted to with regards to who are mandated reporters and how we go about making the referrals. Also, just want to say that when you're a mandated reporter, you're only a mandated reporter within your job scope. So that means on the weekend, if you're not working, you're not a mandated reporter. It's only when you're working in your scope of your job.
Next, there we go. So like Kathy said, making a phone call to your local child welfare office, your law enforcement agency as soon as possible, and then following that up with a written suspected child abuse report and sending it to the agency that you reported it to. We work closely with all law enforcement agencies. We contact them right away if we receive any kind of report of physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, or severe neglect. And Truckee PD is amazing with always going out with us, and we work so well with them, and they are just wonderful with going out. And I'm not saying that because there's someone here, like truly, I come from another county, like I said, 20 years experience, and I've never seen law enforcement respond so quickly. So just following up, calling us and following up is really important. And then we have timeframes that we can go out. We'll either identify it as an immediate response, and we'll go out with Truckee, we get up there, we try to get there within the hour. And then we have a 10-day response, which means it's a sign for investigation, but we have 10 days from the date that report is made to attempt or make contact with the family. You can go to the next slide, please. So if there are consequences if mandated reporters don't make those calls, and can be prosecuted criminally if there's learned abuse and a child is seriously harmed. So could include jail time and fines. Please know that anytime you call in a report, either as a mandated reporter, as a family friend, knowledge of the family, however you know the family, you're always confidential. We do not provide that information to the families when we go out. And a lot of times we hear families say, oh, I know it was the teacher because my kid told me this. And we just tell them, we can't tell you who it is. Don't just assume, because you might destroy a relationship of, with somebody who didn't report. So we always keep that confidential. And then each individual.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, please.
Sorry. And I did want to say too, though, that part of our investigation, though, we do have to reach out to collateral. So we can't just get the family's viewpoints. We also need to talk with other people. So we'd likely be reaching out to, if you're a mandated reporter, we're likely reaching out to you, but we're not going to name you as the mandated reporter, name you as a collateral, somebody that we contact in order to get more information.
Right. So, and then as a mandated reporter, you are responsible to make your own reports to the appropriate agencies. Next slide, please.
Perfect. So how to make a report. There's lots of resources online. So even if you just go in and Google California suspected child abuse report, you will come up to this website, and it has the actual form, which we shorten and call a SCAR. So that would be a form that you would fill out. Both of our county websites also have all of the information with telephone numbers, because again, you need to call with as soon as practically possible. And then you need to follow up in writing within 36 hours. So like I know with Placer County, and I think with Nevada County as well, you can go online and even submit it online or via email. You don't have to fax it anymore, but definitely to call as soon as practically possible. And again, the websites are a great option. Just some quick helpful hints in terms of when you're reporting. As a reminder, it's not the mandated reporter's job to investigate. So your job is to really just report the suspected child abuse, and then it's our job to investigate. So really important, we want you to find out enough information to make a report, but we have seen situations where with good intentions, people are asking leading questions like, oh my gosh, you have a bruise. Did your mom do that? That's a leading question. And, little kids, they're going to respond in a way that doesn't help our investigation at all. So just really important to, it's your job to report, we'll investigate, don't take on that burden yourself. When you're making the call, we have intake workers, they're fully trained and they have a set of questions. Most counties use structured decision-making tools. And so they're going to go through a set of questions, asking demographic information, as well as really trying to determine like, what are the safety issues? What are the risk factors? The more information you have can be helpful. I know for me, when I'm making a report, sometimes I'll do the SCAR, the form ahead of time, just so I have all the information when I'm on the phone with intake. Because even though I work for an agency, I am cross-reporting to other counties and states. So have as much information as you can, like names, addresses, ages, date of birth, if you have them. That way we can, assess quickly and accurately.
Just to add to that too, Kathy, really quick. Even if you've made a report before and you filled out the SCAR completely and there's a new incident and you're making a report, please fill the SCAR out completely, because sometimes families move, especially with the pandemic, people being homeless, you might have a new address, a new phone number, and that allows us to have more updated information so we can make contact with that family.
Thank you. Yeah, and you might be asked questions like, is this a one-time isolated incident, or is this chronic? Like, are the parents drunk every single night, or was this just a one-night situation? I think also you might be asked in terms of like, who are people that support the family? Are there other family members? Because we're always looking for like, what are the protective capacities that this family there are a lot of online and in-person mandated reporter trainings. I know I have to go to a 4-hour one coming up here pretty soon. But if you have any questions, CAPC is great. They can provide the trainings and also just link you to online trainings. So please reach out to our local CAPC if you have questions about mandated reporter trainings.
So once we receive a referral, both Nevada County and Placer County, we have staffings every day where we talk about the referrals, and it's called review, evaluate, and determine. So we refer to it as Red Team. And we look at child welfare history, we look at ages of children, and we talk about what knowledge we have about the families. And with all of this, then we make a determination. And as I stated earlier, when we're responding to families and we're going to investigate the referrals, there's two different types of responses. There's immediate, which we go out with it. We have 24 hours, but like I said, if it's immediate, we go out within an hour in Nevada County. And with 10 days, of course, we have 10 days to go out. In Nevada County, we now have a service that we contract with for Path 2s. And what that means is if during the staffing, we are looking at the concerns, maybe it's a dirty home or family has no PG&E and maybe things are tight for them. We have a contract with Victor, and they have a team called Rapid Response Team, and they can come out with us and we can do a warm handoff. So they can come out with us at the initial response to the home, or maybe we go out to the home and we're talking with the family and we can see that the family could use some additional help, but it doesn't rise to the level of our involvement or to get court involved. So we connect them with Rapid Response Team and we do a warm handoff, and then they take off and they will case manage, and they can manage 3 months. They can case manage for longer if the family needs longer. They can stop at 6 months. They reevaluate the needs of the family every month. And then the last response we have is evaluate out. And that means that it doesn't meet the criteria for a response, but it doesn't mean that we're not contacting that family somehow, some way. And Kathy and I were talking about this morning in both Placer and Nevada County. We might send a letter to a family and offer them Sierra Community House. And we include a flyer for Sierra Community House. Any resources that we know in the Truckee area or all of Nevada County, we'll send resources out specific to what the concerns are in the referral. Sometimes it's a phone call that we'll make to the family and just check in, see what the family has going on. Is there anything we could do to help? Even if a family says, we're good, but yeah, I could use some support, we'll connect them to our RT. We'll up it, because we have the discretion to increase the response to a 10-day. And we'll go out and we'll do that warm handoff so that they can have the Rapid Response Team who helps with housing and finances and counseling and parenting. They can do everything that we do without court involvement or without opening a voluntary case in our county.
Just add, for Placer County, we contract out with Sierra Community House. And so for a lot of our 10-day referrals, which are also considered Path 2s, we work with an advocate from Sierra Community House. And the goal there, kind of like what Mimi was saying, is that while child welfare, we need to go out and we do need to assess safety and risk, right? That's our job. We need to make sure that the children are safe. But by going out there with an advocate from a community partner, and for us, it's Sierra Community House, the advocate's able to engage with the family. So child welfare, we may or may not stay involved, but this way the family can receive the support in a non-threatening way from a community partner. So we utilize them. And then same with our evaluate outs or Path 1s. So with Placer, if we determine that the referral has already been investigated or something like that, then it would be an evaluate out. We don't investigate. However, with the some referrals, we get they don't rise to the level of abuse and neglect, and for a government agency to go knock on doors. However, we see that there's risk and that there's concerns and there's needs. And so in those situations, we reach out to a family via letter or a phone call, and we reach out to Sierra Community House, who then calls the family to offer support and services. So it might be housing, it might be that they need to access counseling or some other basic needs.
Yeah. And we have been doing throughout COVID, we have been doing the in-person responses always. There, the state, when COVID, when we first shut down, we're still going out to homes. We haven't stopped. Parents don't have to let us in ever. And so what we've done is if the allegation is about the condition of their home, then we'll ask the family to either walk through their home and record it, open doors and windows so we can peek through, or FaceTime. Our social workers have gotten really creative in how we investigate the allegations so that we can make sure that we are seeing as much as we possibly can through the pandemic.
Thank you, Mamie. That's a great point. Yeah. While the state shut down, they didn't shut us down. So we were still doing in-person responses, geared up with N95 masks when necessary to meet with families.
Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. So we also, throughout the investigation, from the moment we get the referral until we close it, we use what's called the structured decision-making tool, and we use safety organized practice. So it's the safety organized practice is the approach we take with families, more engaging, less telling them this is how it's going to be. And, really you see that difference when you engage with people. The anxiety level goes down. They're more willing to share. They can identify what the concerns are in their own home. They can identify what their needs are. And when they identify it, then they also buy into, okay, I'm going to take this next step and I'll make this phone call or I'll make this phone call. It's less judgmental. They don't feel judged. And so we, that approach has really increased our ability to get into the homes and our ability to interview children and our ability to connect the families with the appropriate services. With structured decision-making tool, it helps us identify what are safety threats. There's things that we have concerns about, and then there's safety threats. And so we look at the safety threats and then we determine, is there a safety threat that is present? Can that be mitigated through a community agency that the parent can access if we connect them there? Or does it rise to a level that the child's at imminent risk and the only way to keep that child safe is to remove? So we use that tool as a helping tool. It doesn't actually determine what we do, because we have to take everything, like Kathy said, collateral information. We look at what their protective capacity is. We look at their support network. If they don't have one, or they have a person who's their support person, let's get that person and help build on that. So we don't close referrals right away. They're never just go out, investigate and be done. We continue, we'll follow up with them. Another response or a phone call to check in to see if they were able to connect with the community agency that was identified as a benefit for them, that might benefit them. Do you have anything to add on that piece, Kathy?
No, I was just noticing the time that I think we're almost out of time, but I could just say briefly that, so like Mimi had said, normally the state, we have about 30 days to do an investigation. And then from there, we make a determination as to whether we're going to open up a case with the family or to close the referral. And there's different types of cases that we can open up with families. So, and certainly we're always happy to share this process with people if you have specific, questions or concerns. We're certainly happy to, if you ever have any worries about, how we're working with the community, feel free to reach out to Mimi or myself, because we're happy to have those conversations.
Right. And I just wanted to add one last little piece is we send letters out. Mandated reporters receive a letter letting you know what the determination was. So you might get a letter that says it didn't meet the criteria for a response. That does not mean that we're not doing anything. As Kathy and I shared earlier, both of our counties are reaching out to all of the families. Almost every referral for us that comes in, we're sending some kind of letter, especially during the pandemic. We just want to be able to help families as much as possible. And again, take that engaging approach. So we're doing that. So if you see that, just know it's a form letter, and because of confidentiality, we can't go into detail. So if situation is stabilized, that means we went out, we investigated, and we've determined the kids are safe. And maybe we put services in, maybe you'll see at the bottom where it says referrals, it'll say not made, it'll say made. Sometimes you might report something that's already been reported. We can't tell you that it's already been reported. We can't tell you that we're investigating it. And so if it's duplicate, we're not going to go out on the duplicate report. So you might get a letter that says that it doesn't meet that criteria, or that, you know, we're not going to go out, but maybe we already are. Okay. So I just want people to know that, because I think you get the letters and see that we didn't go out and you're like, what? But we do. We touch families one way or another. We are connecting with them somehow.
Great. Well, thank you, Kathy and Mimi. I really appreciate the high level overview and then the process. I think it's really good to remind ourselves the process from referral to kind of all the way through. So it's helpful to see the through line. And then again, to your point around, like, you know, when the world shut down, like, your all's work continued. So thank you for really being on the front lines and going out there over the past year. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you had a closing slide until just now.
Oh, no, I'm sure people
okay.
can read that. We just wanted to thank you all, because
Yes.
really, I mean, all of your agencies and all of you as individuals really work to keep our, you know, community safe and to make it a welcoming place. And as we know that is a huge protective factor for our children, is that when we have a connected community. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. And so just for process wise, I'm going to invite in just a moment Lieutenant Lisa Madden to talk about what's happening with Truckee PD around child abuse, and then we'll open it up to questions for the three of you. So I will turn it over to you, Lieutenant Madden, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. I recognize a couple faces on here, but there are some new faces. So I am Lisa Madden. I'm a lieutenant with the Truckee Police Department. I've been in this position for about a week. So prior to that, I was on patrol. So very familiar with the trends that have been going on the patrol level in regards to child abuse, SCAR reporting, and all that. So I can explain a little bit of the process. When we receive a SCAR report, typically a sergeant receives it. They review it and we process it based upon the information we receive. And if it rises to a level where we believe a detective should handle the SCAR report, which is the child abuse report, we'll hand it off to a detective instead. But for minor or vague information, typically a patrol level officer will handle the report. And we try and get as much information as we can before we actually go out to the house. So we'll reach out to CPS typically and try and get some more information. And then we'll also do some internal research on the family. A lot of times there's missing information, addresses, phone numbers. So we try and get as much information as we can. So when we actually do go out, we can do it quickly. And so we document all that in a report and typically send it back to CPS with the hope that they can give some resources if it doesn't rise to a criminal level. So we do share our information with CPS just so that we can, like I said, provide some resources to them if they are struggling in some way. And so the Truckee Police Department specifically, we've seen a decrease in SCAR reporting over the last year. We typically get our SCAR reports, during school hours and whatnot. And so I think that has been a big an issue because the children aren't in school. Now that they're back in school, I'm hoping that, kids will get back to what they're doing and back to their routines. And if there are any issues in the home that that'll be brought up throughout their day. But definitely over the last year, we have seen a decrease in SCAR we have seen an increase in out of control juvenile calls. Parents understandably at their wits' end with their children and distance learning and whatnot. And so we have seen just a handful, specifically. Not every kid is out of control, but there are a few that parents have just had a really tough time with distance learning and working and the stress of COVID and everything. And so we have been out to their homes frequently. And so working with them, our SRO, we have a newer SRO, which is School Resource Officer Andrew Holbrook, and he's been doing a great job at the schools. During COVID was his first year in the position. And so he went out on a lot of school welfare checks, which if a child wasn't present during school or didn't log in, he would go to their houses and check and see what the issue was, and if there was any resources that he could provide them or the school could provide them to help them out. But specifically with children and what the SRO has seen is a lot of depression coming from this last year, some hopelessness. And so he's been trying to reach out to kids more to provide resources for them. A lot of, I think the parents are they're struggling a lot because they're working. Kids are they're home alone because the parents still have to work. And so there's no supervision for the children. So we're seeing those types of issues arise. Like I said, with school coming back in full time, I think those issues will go away. There are still a handful of students who are specifically distance learning throughout the rest of the year. And so we'll just have to keep an eye on those to make sure that they're doing all right in school and their social lives as well. One thing that we have done as a police department, and specifically Andrew Holbrook has created, was a community award through the town. So the teachers have, they choose a student who they think has rose above everything that's gone on throughout this last year and has gone above and beyond either academically or socially, or who they think that has I guess just gone above and beyond. And so we picked that student, and that student will be presented an award, and at our next town council meeting he will get that award presented, and the mayor will say a quick spiel about what that student has done to earn the award. And the Police Officers Association will also provide a gift card to that student to show appreciation for what they've done. So we as a police department are trying to reach out to students and try and help them out the best we can. If there's ever anything that we can do as a police department that we can collaborate with any group, we'd love to hear it. Like I said, I'm new to this position, and so I'd love to hear your ideas of how we can reach out to the community in a safe manner. COVID is still obviously our top priority, and so but we're still running as a police department. And so if like I said, if anybody wants to reach out any ways that they can, that we can connect with the community and the students, specifically juveniles, we'd love to hear it. So
thank you very much. Yeah, thanks, Lieutenant. It sounds like you're doing some great work, and congratulations on the new role.
Thank you.
So we have about 5 minutes for questions and comments. And so I see a question from Michelle McDonald in the chat box. And I appreciate your question, Michelle, and I recognize it's a very complex question. So maybe we can start with it today and continue the conversation. But Michelle's question, if you kind of scroll the chat a little bit, is specifically around coordination between law enforcement and child welfare services, children's system of care. And how does, so how, I'm just trying to, well, I'll just read it as, how does that impact reporting with respect to people of color? What is the risk for people of color, non-white people, when law enforcement is called? How can we weigh those circumstances in the event of a suspected child abuse issue? And then there's a follow-up comment from Michelle, and that her question kind of, it connects to the meeting's opening conversation around equity, and that she would like to be better informed and know what to do. So either Kathy or Mimi or Lieutenant Madden, if any of you want to take a stab at that question or any kind of response, that would be great.
Yeah, I can start. You know, obviously the children are what's most important. And I know the last thing that that someone wants to see is a police car outside their house when, you know, they're suspected of some sort of child abuse issue. And so we take that into account. And like I said, that's one of the reasons why we try and do some legwork on our end prior to going to a residence. Sometimes it's waiting and collaborating with CPS. Sometimes, you know, if it's an emergency situation, we do have to go in. But, you know, we take everything into consideration. I can say that. And, you know, like I said, sometimes we choose to give our cases to a detective to handle. They're not in uniform. They don't drive marked police cars. And so sometimes that is the better option. And so we do take everything into consideration, as much information as we have available prior to responding to an actual residence.
Thank you. Other comments, Mimi or Kathy?
I was just going to add that, you know, both of our agencies, law enforcement and child welfare, we have a legal mandate to investigate suspected child abuse. So when we do receive that referral, we are going to investigate. When we say we coordinate together, we really try to do that in the best interest of the family. So law enforcement is investigating to see if there's a criminal, like a crime that has occurred. Child welfare is looking at the safety of the child. So we do have different legal mandates that we're looking at. However, in some situations, we decide to investigate together because it's less impact on the family. It's less interviews for a child, less meetings for a family. So sometimes we work together in that way. Other times we're just in touch. So the social worker would be talking with a detective and deciding who's going to take the lead on the investigation. So it really is a legal mandate. And with regards to, you know, respecting people of color, I mean, I think that we all do our best of respecting everybody that we interact with and work with them in an honest, transparent, respectful manner.
It's same with Nevada County, same type of approach that Kathy's talking about. We connect with law enforcement, you know, if it's the allegations that I talked about, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, or severe neglect. Nevada County, we have to have parents' permission to interview children. And so when you have a child who's in there and the allegations are about physical abuse or sexual abuse, then we do respond jointly with law enforcement, and law enforcement will interview the child and we'll talk with parents and we talk with the child as well. But we try to keep it as minimal as possible and let the law enforcement officer conduct the interview so that the child's only being interviewed once, like Kathy said. The other piece is we do look as part of our staffing. Then when I say we talk about referrals every day, part of that is looking at what is cultural and you know, have we approached this family before? What was that like? What worked? What didn't work? So we know what to not do again. And that safety organized practice that I talked about earlier with that engaging approach versus the accusatory approach, we approach all of our families that way. So we treat everyone with respect. And I have to say, in the time that I've been with Nevada County, I think Truckee PD has done a great job with interviewing families and collaborating with us. And you know, we will continue to strive to be better every time. we go out and listen to the feedback. And again, we talk about what works and what didn't work.
Thank you, Mimi. And Michelle's comment back was thank you for the clarification, and she appreciates it and feels reassured. And then there was a question a little bit up as far as how does reporting impact families with undocumented status? So we just have a couple minutes left for this question.
It has.
Oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say it has absolutely no basis. We don't care if you're undocumented. It has nothing to do with our investigation, and we don't put it in any report. So please disseminate that information that, you know, it has nothing to do. We don't report it to anybody. We don't put it in any report. So please, like I said, just give that information out that the child is more important than anything. And so just know that we don't take that into account at all.
We
Thank
don't
you.
ask about people's immigration status during our investigations. We're certainly aware that that is a huge concern when we come knocking on the doors. And that's another, you know, reason I'm so grateful that we're able to contract and work with Sierra Community House, because their advocates often have more of a trusting relationship with the families. And so sometimes what we'll do is the advocate will call the family first and say, hey, we have a suspected child abuse referral. Social worker needs to meet with you. Let's set up a time and a place. And so then that'll make families feel more comfortable with a government person coming to their door.
Thank you, Kathy. And then for the sake of time, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Nevada County doesn't ask as well, but if it comes up in conversation, if a parent shares that they're concerned about it, you know, our goal is to provide every family we touch with or we connect with a resource. So then we do the work to try to figure out how to connect them with the resources.
Thank you, Mimi. And so for the sake of time, would Kathy, Mimi, and Lieutenant Madden, if you wouldn't mind answering Kayla's question in the chat box. She's curious if interviews are conducted in Spanish when needed. And then also there was a question, Lisa, around the award nomination process. So if you wouldn't mind answering those in the chat box, again, just for the sake of time, because I'd love to make sure that we're moving on to the school piece. So thank you very much for the Placer County, Nevada County, and Truckee PD overview. Again, like I think it's such a critical piece, obviously, this whole child abuse prevention puzzle. So it's really helpful to understand what's currently happening and what processes you have in place. And again, thank you so much for your good work, and particularly over the last year. So we're going to shift gears to talk about what child abuse prevention looks like in the schools and kind of trends, issues, and any data that we're seeing in the schools. So I'd like to welcome Trisha with Sierra Community House to talk specifically about prevention programs. And then Kathy, did you have, or Cindy, did you have your hand up? No, okay.
I just had a comment that I had put the resources for the OCAP in the chat box.
Okay.
They do free mandated reporter trainings, and the CAPS, you could always follow up after those trainings, and they are free and they are in Spanish.
Thank you.
Check out the website. Thank you.
Okay, Trisha, we're going to turn it over to you to talk about what's happening in the schools from a prevention perspective.
Great, thank you, Allison. Hi, I'm Trisha Baird. I am the Community Education and Prevention Manager at Sierra Community House. So I'm going to talk about our programs and how we work to prevent the incidents of interpersonal violence, including child abuse, and how it relates to prevention as well. But first, I want to briefly share what we can do at Sierra Community House to provide assistance for those who may be victims or survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, or child abuse. If you could go to the next slide, please, Christina. So what we can do as an agency for those in crisis are provide advocacy and support for them, make referrals, and give financial support for mental health services and counseling and therapy services. We can provide housing and shelter assistance, have legal advocates available, and we provide that collaboration with CPS through differential response, which is what Kathy mentioned about the home visits. And I did want to mention we previously had a children's program through Tahoe Safe Alliance and then in Sierra Community House. Unfortunately, due to some funding funding that dissolved, we no longer have that program, but we are still providing the same or similar services for those families and children that we could provide services for before. Thank you. So as a whole agency, we work with the protective factors to support the prevention of family violence, including supplemental food, parenting classes and support groups, general advocacy, legal advocacy, basic needs supports, and violence prevention education. And I'm going to talk more about the violence prevention education piece, but I just wanted to make sure that I talked about what the whole agency is doing as well around prevention. So next slide, please. So the Community Education and Prevention Program at Sierra Community House, we provide the violence prevention education for youth. We have youth empowerment groups. We provide education for adults and do some community organizing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these. And again, our programming teaches skills that are relevant to the prevention of interpersonal violence, including child abuse. And we teach skills such as recognizing physically and emotionally harmful behaviors. We teach de-escalation techniques, bystander intervention skills, boundary setting, and recognizing personal support. So finding strengths in self or finding people that they can turn to in needs. And so what we're doing in the elementary school is in kindergarten, we do a puppet show focused on child abuse prevention. Yellow Dino is our puppet. First grade, we do bullying prevention. Second grade is an alternatives to anger, emotion recognition and validation program. In third grade, we cover child abuse prevention again. Fourth grade, alternatives to anger. And then fifth grade, bullying and sexual harassment prevention. So all of our programs are age appropriate. And I want to mention too that even though these are sorted out by grade, we do offer schools, we can totally change up our programming as far as what topics we cover in what grade, what length of time. We can even accommodate specific topics and create curriculum for schools if they're having an issue that they want us to come in and talk to their students about. So then in middle school, the next slide, please. Same as fifth grade and sixth grade, we focus on bullying and sexual harassment prevention again, but at a more age appropriate level. In seventh grade, we start talking about teen dating and intimate partner violence prevention. And also we focus a lot on healthy relationships. We recognize a lot of youth don't have the positive role models and positive tools to cope with unhealthy behaviors. So we try to focus a lot on the healthy too. And then eighth grade, we move into sexual assault prevention and healthy relationships education again. And then moving into high school. High school is a little bit of a different format. We most commonly provide these programs through the health classes. So they vary because the high schools have different length of classes or trimesters or that sort of thing where we can get in and provide the education. But we do focus on sexual harassment, sex trafficking, teen dating violence and intimate partner violence, healthy relationships, sexual assault, media influence, and gender stereotypes. And the benefit of being in the health classes is that we do cover a lot of what they're required to discuss in health classes. So we often have a lot of support from the teachers and what they've already covered in class and how it relates to the topics that we're discussing. So then moving into another school program is our youth empowerment groups. Next slide, please. So youth empowerment groups, we have been doing them virtually as well as all of our programming for the last year. And I will say the youth empowerment groups specifically have been a little bit more challenging. It can be hard to build that rapport and get the same participation we normally do when we're at the school. And during non-COVID times, we always take snacks and bring like activities to do with the kids, hands-on things. So it's been a little bit more difficult, but in general, our youth empowerment groups are to provide a safe space for students and really provide that space where they can talk and share and provide peer support to one another and that sort of thing. And our goals include creating positive environments and communities, promoting healthy friendships and relationship choices, increasing positive self-worth, empowering youth to speak out and model healthy lifestyles, and reducing stigmas around mental health. So most of our groups are held for 4th grade through high school age students, and we do have the same facilitator working with those students for about 10 sessions. And the students in these groups are usually referred by school staff, so counselors or teachers. And they're usually just students recognized as needing a little extra support for any reason. So it's a good space for them to come to and feel safe and have that support. And then the next slide, please. So in our education for adults, we provide training for professionals, education for parents, and community education. An example of some trainings for professionals that we can provide, like sexual harassment in the workplace trainings. We can provide education for teachers. We work with other nonprofits to provide violence prevention education. We also do some suicide prevention trainings, as well as mental health first aid and other mental health trainings as well. And then education for parents, oftentimes it focuses on, I think the most requested topics are cyber safety and bullying prevention. So really discussing with parents what they can do to help their youth if they are finding themselves bullied or being a bully. So looking at it that way and how to develop those relationships and communication around those topics with their youth. And then our community education, we have a crisis intervention training. It's actually starting this month if anyone is interested. It's a 69-hour training provided by Sierra Community House, really focusing on domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse. We do trainings, local colleges on for like resident assistance and different things like that there. We can provide personal safety self-defense classes for community members, and then also the same topics of suicide prevention and mental health prevention trainings as well. So kind of a lot of the same topics we're providing in the schools, and for youth, we can also provide for adults and professionals in the community. And then the next slide, please. And then community organizing. We do have it's called Close to Home Truckee. It's a program that is funded through the California Department of Public Health. And the goal is to mobilize the Truckee community to take action and make change toward ending interpersonal violence, so domestic violence, sexual violence, and child abuse. And really, it does that through engaging adults and youth in the community. We have a group at Truckee High School called Teen Peace Project, and these students are working toward that goal as well. And yeah, the goal is to get more people on board and kind of create a movement toward safe communities where healthy relationships thrive. So I know that was really quick. I didn't want to take up too much time. So just sharing what we do to support as an agency, as well as through our prevention programming. If anyone has any questions or needs any more information, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to direct you to the right people at Sierra Community House too. I know it's a quite large organization now, so I'm happy to navigate that for anyone too. So thank you.
Thank you, Trisha. I really appreciate the overview. And as a parent of 3 kids in the school district, they've participated in many of those classes at the different grades. So it's been fun over the years hearing about all your good work. So thanks for all you're doing. So I'm going to turn it over to Alicia to talk about what she is seeing as a school counselor. And then we'll open it up at after Alicia for any questions for Trisha or Alicia. So thank you very much.
So my name's Alicia Lampley, and I'm the counselor at Sierra High School in the Placer County Community School. And we had a counselor PLC this morning, and so I was able to talk to all the counselors about these 2 questions and kind of summarize some of the information that was shared with me today. So the first part, we kind of approached it from a social emotional standpoint, which includes some of the prevention programs you guys are talking about. And so thinking about what are the trends that we're seeing, just kind of following up on Mimi and Kathy and Lieutenant Madden's information. I think it depends on the age right? Of like what, and then were they in, are we talking distance learning or now that they're back in person? But just in general, I think across the board, just having students, young people having difficulty with regulation, routines, consistency. You know, if parents aren't home, and they're not there to monitor online learning or don't understand online learning because it's complex, it was really difficult for kids to, for some kids to engage, and also for them to establish a routine that would support online learning. I think kind of interesting, just an observation I have is that I think when we're talking distance learning, for students who school was not an enjoyable place to be, I actually think in some ways there was less pressure on them to perform, to be there. The anxiety was reduced. I think it was harder for kids who are really involved in school, where your social network, your whole life is school. I think it was much more difficult. And so I think there's a group of students who've remained in cohort C, and that's where counselors are the most concerned, because they're very isolated, and now they're out there while all their peers are back in person. So there's a lot of concern about that. I think we're seeing just a lot of excitement for kids to be back, and they are struggling to kind of get back in time and be there all day and have a new environment. But for the most part, the feeling is they're excited, they're enthusiastic. And I think that overall throughout the year, there's just been a lot of anxiety, higher levels of anxiety and depression and apathy. A lot of apathy and just a lot of fatigue, change fatigue. We changed the schedule, and for very logical reasons, we've changed the schedule many times. And so it's been really hard for kids and parents to adapt to. And just not having that connection, just like Kathy and Mimi said, and Lieutenant Madden, we're not seeing as much, even though they're in their home. It's not the same for kids to open up and disclose things that are going on in their lives in a virtual setting. It's not the same. So I think that'll change now that they're back in person. And I even kind of wonder if it's going to be like, there will be like a higher onslaught, because they'll be talking about all the things that have been happening in the last year that have basically gone kind of unchecked. So just from a kind of what we're doing in schools as prevention programs, this year, T2SD has really put social emotional learning at the forefront of what we do. So every school has built it into the schedule, whether in distance learning or in-person setting. And so it really varies from school to school, because they have to figure out where is that going to fit within their day and within their schedule, and who's going to deliver it. So I'll just give some kind of general information. So it's a minimum of once a week. On some sites, it's once a day. And we're talking kind of a good chunk of time. It could be anywhere from a handful, 20 minutes a day to 1 hour once a week. And the things that they kind of use, different programs they use at the elementary, especially Second Step, DESA, Heart Math, mindfulness. And these are all things you guys are like, what does this mean? But it covers just this umbrella: social emotional learning, coping skills, healthy habits, self-awareness, relationships. And so at the high school level, they also use Hope Squad, Link Crew, What's Up Wellness, some smaller grief groups, kind of bringing back in our community partners like Sierra Community House and Gateway Mountain Center to kind of supplement some of that now that we're back in person. And it might be small group settings, whole class settings, pre-recorded videos, live sessions. It's been a combination of a lot of different things. And we also have a one-on-one therapist that we've been able to refer through the district. That was, I think, community funded. And so students who need short-term but kind of immediate support, we've had therapists that we've hired, in addition to making referrals out into the community. And so that's just kind of a brief overview. There's so many different programs and curriculums and things that schools use, and it all just depends like what grade level and what kind of setting we're in. Kind of depends on like what we use. And that's about it. That's all.
Thank you. I appreciate the overview. And again, I appreciate the insight, and I think it's helpful to hear your perspective. And Kathy and Mimi to really have a good understanding of what's happening with youth in our community and with kids in general. And again, like it really strikes me like all the work that you're doing and the focus from TTUSD on social emotional, coupled with Sierra Community Health, like there's some really good programming in place. So any quick questions for Alicia or Trisha around what's happening in the schools? Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Beatrice to bring us home with the overview of resources that you can all walk away with today.
Thank you. What a great meeting, a lot of information. I feel really grateful for this group. I feel really grateful for all the support community partners bring into this community. It's truly, truly amazing. CAPC, Child Abuse Prevention Council, really focuses on how do we support your work? What can we do to give you tools, to give you educational materials, to give you learning activities materials? We want to know how we can support your work. That's what we do. That's why we're here. So please connect with either myself, CAPC coordinator, Cindy Maciel, Susan Duffy-Smith. Anyone is welcome to be on our committee. So please, if you're not in our committee already, please, I welcome you. And I want to point out again, we have the mandated reporter trainings. We're starting a lot of great collaboration with Greater Kids Sacramento to bring additional resources from up the hill here. So we are looking forward, we're excited to collaborate and to bring some additional resources up here to our communities. I want to talk a little bit again about the bookmark because there's a very, very positive message on here. And it says, the way we talk to our children become their inner voice. And there's a list of positive affirmations that we all would love to hear. Like, for instance, you can say no. You can say yes. Your words are meaningful. These are things that really shape the inside of our brain and our confidence within ourselves. And I don't think these are things that we say enough to ourselves and to everyone around us. And that's why we also thought the Celebrate effort was very, very meaningful work for us, for CAPC, because I think that I have heard the word effort multiple times in this meeting. And everything, all of our work that we are doing, it takes large amounts of effort, not to mention the effort that it takes to get out of bed, to get our children to school, and to show up. So the amount of efforts that we are making every day are huge. And I don't really think that we ever take the time to celebrate it. It just kind of sort of becomes routine and things that we have to do. And I want to bring us back to why we are doing it. Why are we putting the effort? And why not celebrate the effort together as individuals, as families, as a community? That's pretty much it for me. Thank you all for joining us today. Very, very powerful training information. Thank you all. Cindy, you want to add anything else? Thank you, everyone.
So thank you. So I would just say, yeah, thank you to all of our speakers. We really appreciate everyone's perspective. And I think in closing, because I know, child abuse is definitely like a heavy topic for sure. And I know that the work that you all do is very rewarding, and it can also be very challenging. So if you could just share in the chat box, one thing you're going to do today to celebrate your effort. And that could be anything. It could be giving a colleague a high five. It could be giving yourself a pat on the back. It could be taking yourself for a walk around the block. It could be taking a nap. It could be getting in your PJs as soon as possible. it could look differently for everybody. So if you could just share in the chat box, or if anybody wants to jump in and use their voice to share, you're welcome to do that as well. Oh, I love rollerblading, Trisha. And then as you're doing that, our final bit of housekeeping is that Christina has dropped a link to a meeting evaluation form in the chat box. So if you could please take time to fill that out, we really take a look at those. And as a reminder, this is your collaborative, and we are always open to feedback, both positive and constructive. And so, yeah, we're open to any and all comments. And so with that, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your perseverance and being here for a 2-hour Zoom meeting. And again, thank you to all of our CAPC partners and all the good work you're doing in a community. It really makes a difference. So thank you so much.